Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think we both can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to make sure that you have at least one thing up.
Um, oh, sorry. So I just wanted to talk about um so
Talk about what?
you know um some issues I had with
With.
um basically the you guys talk a lot about like trans genocide,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And?
and like I've been following you guys for a few years now, and all the policies. Basically, do you think it is maybe not rational, but like what would your advice be or like response to um people like trans people who are either like just starting their transition or in like the middle of it, being paranoid that there will be like the laws will make transitioning illegal before they are able to finish transitioning, basically.
Yeah. Do you wanna start with this, or you want me to?
You can if
Like,
you
do you
want.
think, like, yeah,
Yeah. So, my honest thing would be is the best possible way that you could deal with this is. So first off, well, let's assume for a moment that we're talking about like we're the U.S. because that's where I know best. Let's assume we're in a state that does not have laws currently that are preventing you from transitioning, right? Um, and if that's the case, then the only concern is about fears of, either violence or problems. And so what I would say is that it would be really beneficial, in my mind, to just keep going with your transition. Unless you are in a dangerous situation, unless you have like people actively physically trying to prevent you from transitioning, if you know this is right for you, if you know this is who you are, then to me, I would say it would be really beneficial to go through and continue your transition, because that's probably going to piss off transphobes more than anything. Now, granted, if you're in a state that is starting to have more restrictive laws, it's going to depend on what those laws are. So, for example, if you're in a state that is banned trans healthcare for, teenagers, then the one thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to wait till you're 18, unfortunately. Unless your parents are willing to either move or do whatever, because there's things out of your hands. There's things that aren't there. Obviously, hopefully, you have parents that are supportive and love you and are going to do what they can to help. But there is only so much power you have as a teenager. But if you're an adult, then by definition, if you're able to transition, still do so. If you're not, let's say we're talking about the proposed Arkansas law where you can't till you're 25. You only have so many options. One would be is that you still try to transition to the best of your ability. You just may not be able to do it through the medical intervention. But the other thing is that you may have to either look into getting your transitioning stuff surreptitiously. That is, you may have to go through DIY. You may have to talk to other trans people about how to do that. Autogynemelia, I just put that in chat, the DIY HRT wiki. It also could mean, going across state lines if that's legally able. The other thing is that you could decide to either wait, which is shitty and no one wants to do, or you're either going to want to do that, or, and this is the thing where I have to be really careful with this because I don't want to be called out for the thing we've told, made fun about Lily. If you are financially privileged enough and able to, and you have a job that allows you either work from home or allows you to move, such as a job such as like working at Starbucks where you can transfer to a new store or whatever, then the moving option could be there for you, but that is not going to be available to everyone because financially that's just not possible. So the thing I would say is, if you really truly want to transition, there are ways to do it. You're just going to have to find those avenues, which means going online, asking people, talking to other trans people who've had to deal with these issues, and then go from there. As far as like the psychological portion of this, I would make sure you have a therapist. Make sure you have a therapist who's really good at this stuff and who's going to be able to support you when you're dealing with this, because essentially the issue is that if you're in a state where you are legally prevented from transitioning, you are essentially under siege. Like, let's be really clear about that. You are essentially under siege and being prevented from affirming healthcare that is medically necessary. This is unprecedented. Save for the Roe v. Wade stuff, this is unprecedented in modern history. The idea that healthcare is being prevented to be given to somebody. So in a lot of ways, what I would highly recommend is doing your research, talking to other trans people. If you're afraid to transition, ask yourself why. Are there actually like physical and social direct threats, or is it just a concern about what ifs? And that would be my thoughts. Zizi, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, I'll flesh out mine a little bit. But no, my stuff is pretty similar to Poppy though. Big thing is going to be evaluating what the actual risk to you is, right? If that way you can make an informed decision if this is something to do or not. So looking at like, okay, real world, if I do X, then what things are actually likely to happen because of that, right? No matter what choice you go with. And that's just cost-benefit analysis, right? Just to kind of figure things out. Because where that threshold is for choosing to do something could be different for everyone. Some people might be like, you know what, I am okay waiting a little bit, or I have another plan in place. Other people might be like, you know what, no, it's totally right for me to be on hormones for as long as possible, and I will take as much time as I can get with those. It just kind of depends. And I think especially during these things going on, it's important to network. Okay, not that everyone needs to be friends, but networking with local organizations or a local online community, or a lot online community isn't as local because you could do that. That way there are people that you can work together with, people that you could pool resources with, you can help keep an eye on political stuff and help influence that. And the other thing too is I think it's important to start talking with supportive friends and family and help explain to them what's going on and let them know that, like, hey, this could very deeply affect me. I may need some help, you know, getting out of the state or getting to a place where I can do this. Is there anyone willing to work with me, right? We know that moving's really, really hard, and if you've got more supports to help you do that, see if they're there. See if you can use those at some point.
Yeah.
You know, or if if you're a kid and you get the chance to go to college, pick another state. You know, I mean, also, see what you can do.
Also, let's be really clear, like, if we're talking about, like, let's say a fascistic takeover of the United States, or at least over the red states, right? If there is a way in which that happens, then what I would highly suggest is that what you're going to have to do is, you know, much like any other civil rights group, we're probably going to have something of an underground railroad or something equivalent to where we can support trans people in their transition in red states. Like, there's going to have to be people who are willing to break laws.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm not advocating that I'm only advocating that in roadblocks. The reality is that, like, we are talking about a civil rights issue. So from my perspective, your response is going to be based on the level to which things have gotten shitty, and go from there.
Yeah. And I do want to hope a little bit, because at least if some of the stuff does go through, there are organizations that are keeping an eye on this stuff and waiting in the wings to respond to them. I know the ACLU's always has stuff going on. Lambda Legal, I think, is another one. And there's
the AMA is also pushing back on it. APA, the other APA.
Yeah, so those are a lot of the medical organizations that we talk about. So hopefully between everyone, they can all pool their resources and tackle this stuff, because that's just how this is going to have to go.
The other thing I'll really express to you is that if you're an adult, or not if you're an adult, make sure your passport's up to date. I know I've been bad about this because I haven't gotten mine updated yet, but that's something we're planning on doing the next couple months. But yeah, get your passport. Like, if there comes a point where we have to be in a refugee situation, I can tell you that the best state or the best country to go to at this point in the game is going to be Canada. If you look at the most recent findings as far as trans protections and legal support, Canada is literally number one out of like 200 some odd countries. It is like there's a graph I have somewhere that goes over the data and talks about it from the perspective of like which countries are best to travel to, and hands down Canada wins. US is like 24th or 26th. Like, we are not great for this. There are other countries that are worse than us. Japan is awful for this. So weirdly enough, Canada is kind of the based place to go for that. That's not to say they don't have problems, but yeah. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Um yeah, that's honestly a lot more than I was expecting to hear.
Yeah, and the other thing is I'll say is just like assess your like surroundings. Like you said in chat, like you live in New York. Like if you're in New York City, you're probably fine. Like it's a large enough progressive like enclave where you should be able to get support and help. And the thing is that, you know, try not to leave a blue state. I mean, like that's a thing. So that would be my thoughts. I mean, like we live in Michigan. We're lucky that we have a state that's like, despite how red parts of it are, like we are literally we're relatively okay based on everything. There are things that could be way better, but yeah, it's one of those things where like,
Well, and Whitmer just got elected again, so like,
and we got a full blue legislature, right?
yeah, no, it's working out. Again, voting matters.
Yeah. But yeah, if that answers your question, great. Yeah, I would just say is like, yeah, just I would say if you're in that area,
I actually wanted to. Oh yeah.
I was gonna say I would just say do a quick risk assessment of the area you're in. I know we all have a tendency towards paranoia, but I think that we have to bring that into a reasoned question of like, look at the laws in your area, look at your actual state. What do they do? How do they protect people? What things are put in place to protect your well-being? Like, if you're gonna make a decision, you should probably make a reasoned one rather than based on paranoia.
Or what organizations or companies are you working with? What are their policies?
Yeah.
Right.
You said you had one more thing?
Yeah. By the way, that was really helpful. Yeah. My thing is I also just wanted to get your guys' opinion on like the book burnings, basically, like because people have been talking about it, but not quite.
Yeah. So you're talking about the fact that there are conservatives going through and like
Because
systematically.
I'm an author, like I'm a published author, and like I'm worth.
Yeah.
And like I just like because I write queer stories, and like I've wanted to get your opinion on like the extent of the issue and what's really going on.
So as far as the extent of the issue, I couldn't tell you. I'm not super well read on that. I will say that like I do know there is experiences of people going through and to my understanding are, you know, there's conservatives that are going through libraries and taking care of anything that has critical race theory or anything that's queer stuff. The reality is that even if those things are taken out of some places, a lot of libraries have a lot of stuff online. Zena's talked about this in several videos before, where a lot of stuff is like they're online. And I would say that probably what I would do is just make sure those things are available there. Because to some degree, as much as book burnings are an anti-intellectual exercise, they're absolutely nonsensical. They're an attempt to get rid of information because conservatives, fascists, but I repeat myself, want the ability to make it so you can't see these things. They want them invisible. They want them marginalized. The problem is we live in a time period with the internet. They can't. Even if 110% they try getting rid of the physical incarnations of these books, a lot of these books exist in digital formats, are accessible in libraries for like nothing. Yeah, they can't censor Wattpad. Like they can't, like there's just, that's just the way it is. And and here's the other thing is like, we live in an unprecedented age of queer content. Like I've talked about this on stream, but like ZZ and I have, between like ZZ's finding of Sunstone, which is brilliant, among the many things both me and them have found as far as like on webtoons, as far as Yuri girl love stuff out of like manhwa.
Manhwa, manga.
Online webcomics. We're going to talk about one of those actually tonight.
Right.
But then we had our talk with Keffels.
The library systems even, have like Overdrive, or I think it's called Libby nowadays. Hoopla is another common one. Both of those have lots of stuff on them too. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So yeah, like I would just say is like, yeah, they might burn stuff and that might suck in some areas, but that stuff, we live in an age where they just can't. And then they know it and they can cope.
I think my thing is, I do find it concerning for those areas. I don't know how large of a scope it is. I know in Michigan there was a case where one city, they wanted books taken out of the library, and they didn't burn them, but they did vote to defund the library, and then another organization stepped in and funded the library instead, because the library refused to get rid of things. So I do think that there is a lot of good people in the library system and working in that field that are like, no, we're not getting rid of this stuff.
Paco brings up a good point in chat. By the way, book burnings, bannings currently are isolated as random events or school districts. They are not systemic coordinated efforts, at least yet.
Yeah. Well, and I like book burnings really less as far as things that conservatives could potentially do. The banning part, when books get banned, generally it makes the book sales go really high. Because when you tell people they can't have the thing, they all want it, okay? All right, this has happened with numerous books throughout, even the last couple decades. But yeah, I think as much as possible, get stuff published in a variety of places.
Yeah, make sure your stuff has a digital if you yourself are a writer, like you said, I would make sure you have a digital content online. Have a website if you can. Have that posted there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a lot of authors do maintain social media as well. Like, that really is part of the career nowadays. So I think that's also a good way to kind of get in touch with people and get your work spread around is, hey, I am writing queer content.
Yep. So with that said, yeah, so we're going to move on to somebody else, but thank you so much, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Oh, anytime. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
You're welcome.
If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.